Hey everyone, Liz here from the Nail Hub. I just finished listening to the first ever podcast I ever did, which was on December 11th, 2014, almost 9 years ago. And you know what's funny? There's a couple things. One is, as we get older, our voices get lower. So it's so funny to listen to myself from 9 years ago because I sound like a baby, number one. um, it's so also nice to kind of have, it is weird, when I grew up, all we had was photo albums, right? And that was kind of how you reconnected with what you used to be like when you were younger. Maybe you'd have like VHS tapes and stuff, but really we didn't record much of our lives back then, right? I mean, I was born in the 80s, and there just wasn't that ability to record as much as we do today, right? I mean, today we take tons of pictures every single day, we record a whole bunch, we're sharing on social media. So it is kind of cool to revisit something that's archival like that, where it's me 9 years ago that I can listen to and hear what I used to think and hear, the emotion in my voice and just kind of reconnect with where I was back then. And it is really cool. I think I had some good points. I listened to what I had to say when I started the Nail Hub podcast, and a little, most of it was background. So, you know, I I am an odd duck in a lot of ways. I was raised by two very A-type people. So, there was no kind of wishy-washiness with the way that I grew up. It was very high expectation, loving, but very high expectation. And my parents are both, they both come from what I would consider, maybe lower to middle class families that sacrificed a lot to make the lives of their children better. My parents, my grandparents were very rough people, and I think people that went through things like World War II, even World War I, if they were children when that happened, that is pretty crazy. My grandmother, she actually was around for the Great Depression as well as World War II. She was actually, over 20 years old when World War II finally, came to a head. And so when you have parents like that, I think my parents, they just grew up in a very stoic and very work-driven environment. And so my parents, really instilled a lot of that in me too. And I'm very grateful for that because it does provide some sort of fearlessness and grit, which I think are very important. I think my parents did a really good job trying to motivate me. And, I do self-flagellate quite a bit. I definitely am one of those people that I push myself probably harder than I should. I don't give myself very much room for failure. I don't give myself very much grace. Maybe that's something that I could improve on. But I am glad that they did, instill that in me. And my parents both also sacrificed quite a bit as well. I mean, when I was born, 2 weeks after I was born, I think my mom was 24 at the time, which is very young. And my father was actually, he had to leave and move overseas. So I was born in Pocatello, Idaho, of all places. I love Pocatello. It's a small town. If you've ever been through there, it's just a really cute place. It's grown a lot since I was a kid. I still have my uncle there and my cousins, and my mom and dad still live there. And we always try to go up there at least once a year. I just love it. So I was born in a very small town, Pocatello, Idaho. And my parents are actually both Canadian, but they both struck out on their own. They both kind of left, their homes and tried to make a life for themselves. And they both wound up in Idaho. My mom for school, and my dad went there to be a cowboy, and he started working there. And he always wanted to be a cowboy and have horses, and so he did. He moved to Idaho and bought a trailer and had some horses and did rodeo, and super cool. My dad's one of those people, I swear to God, he's got 9 lives, and he has so many stories to tell if you actually get him to tell you the stories. He's a very private person, but man, that guy has so much knowledge, so much experience. And it's cool to get to know your parents on that level, right? They're no longer your parents. It's no longer like mom and dad. It's like, tell me about yourself. Tell me about your history. Tell me about the things you grew up with. Tell me about how you became the person that you are and the experiences you had and the traumas you endured. My dad is definitely one of those people. He's got a lot of layers. So anyway, they wound up in Idaho of all places and met through a friend. And, hit it off and got married, and then I came along, and 2 weeks after I was born, my mom flew by herself to Austria in Europe. Didn't speak the language. My dad was already over there because he had to for work. And that's really an example of how my parents have taken life in a fearless way where they are willing to take advantage of opportunities that come their way, and they are willing to risk a lot and put a lot of effort and a lot of sacrifice in place in order to take advantage of those opportunities. And I'm very grateful for that attitude that they gave me, because I am also equally fearless. I am also very driven, and I thank them for that gift every single day. So that was one of the key things that I talked about in my first podcast, which I think is very relevant, because as an entrepreneur, right, and all of us who are, talking about the nail industry, right, let's make this specific. Being a nail technician or a salon owner or a student, even going to school and making the decision you're going to become a nail technician in the first place, this is an entrepreneurial journey. And it is actually, I was talking to my friend Ashley the other day, and she was saying, being an entrepreneur, because entrepreneur is this like fancy word that we think is something that only applies if you're like a multi-billionaire and you started your own business in a garage and now you're like, Jeff Bezos. I totally disagree. I think entrepreneurship is really that self-starting, small business minded person. And it really is self-discovery. That's what Ashley said. She said, it's really more about self-discovery. I was like, gosh, that's such a good way to say it, because it is self-discovery. It's about having that sense of fearlessness and having that self-motivation and having that grit and making the conscious decision every morning that you wake up that you're going to face this as a new day, that you're going to step up to the plate. You're going to, face these obstacles that come your way. You're going to, move and bob and weave, just like a boxer, and avoid those punches if you can, take some in the chin, and you're going to get up and do it all over again. And I think that is such a cool thing to think about with you all listening to this. Whether you're a nail technician, maybe you're thinking about becoming a nail technician, maybe you're a salon owner, maybe you used to be a nail technician and you've taken a break or you've retired. I think you guys will all identify with that, which is we are entrepreneurs. We are, we are in a self-discovery journey every single day, and we learn so much about ourselves by going through these challenges. And, the things that stood out to me from my first podcast episode were words like opportunities and challenges and being able to pivot and obstacles. And 9 years ago, I talked about that because in 2012, I had left my corporate job and I started my nail salon. I went to nail school, which was an adventure in and of itself. Taught me so much about how the industry worked just from the get-go. Started my own salon, which was really successful, but also the salon ownership thing for me it just wasn't for me. It's just not for my personality, but it was such a good experience. And it really led me to do what I do today. And that experience was full of opportunities and challenges and needing to pivot and being able to face obstacles and overcome them. And if you ever start reading about, entrepreneurship, I mean, those words are completely universal no matter what business you get into. So it's cool because it makes you feel like you're not alone in this. It makes you feel like, hey, everybody's on this journey. And I will tell you that one of the things that I think, just looking back on what ultimately were the keys to success, just to share those little nuggets with you guys, is obviously I made a huge career change. I left a very cushy, job in the corporate world. I laid it all on the line. I risked it all to get into the nail industry, started my own salon, which was, it's expensive to run salons for a litany of reasons. And being a nail technician, I worked as a nail technician too, full time in my own salon. And it's difficult. I mean, you really have to know a lot of financial information in order to make sure that you're making the profit you think you are. And I'll get into that in future episodes. But the career change thing, for me, I started to think about what were the things that kind of kept me motivated the last 9 years, and what are the things that I would consider my keys to success. One of them, if I could really encourage you guys, if you don't already have these, as your personality, or if these don't come naturally to you, I would really encourage you to get in touch with that side and really dig into some of these ideas, because I think that they are very true, and they are the thing that differentiate people who give up versus people who don't. And really, in my opinion, the difference between a successful business owner and someone who isn't a successful business owner is whether or not you're willing to give up. And so one of the big things that I've noticed is being addicted to learning. I think that if we realize that we can never really be fully loaded with education, there's always something to learn, there's always something new, there's always something evolving. And I think being addicted to learning is one of the huge parts of what has kept me growing in my career and evolving as a person and motivated in my life, not just professionally, but also personally. The other thing too is curiosity. Curiosity is so underrated. Curiosity is one of those things, and it kind of has to do with being addicted to learning as well. Wanting to know why, and I am that person. I remember in school, my number one question was why, right? Someone would tell me something, I'd be like, all right, well, give me a good reason why. Tell me why, explain the background, explain where this comes from. I love to know the origin of things. I love to know the origin of words. I love to know why things are the way that they are. If you just give me a hard and fast rule and you don't tell me why that is, you don't tell me the reasoning behind it, you don't explain the whole context of it, I will ignore that. I will move on. I'm too rebellious in my nature to listen to just hard and fast rules. I think a lot of people identify with that too, right? We don't like to be just told something. We like to be told why. Include us in why. Your parents give you a curfew. Your number one question is why? Why are you giving me a curfew? And then your parents explain to you, hopefully, we're worried about your safety. We're worried about you getting, knocked up or whatever, whatever that reasoning is. And it can be funny like that, maybe not funny when you're a teenager and you want to be able to stay out all night. But I think there's things about that the reasoning is important. So I think the curiosity level, understanding why, and I always try to lead with that curiosity factor in the way that I teach, is teaching why. Teaching why something is the case. Why is your lamp important? Why do you need to look at the ingredients in your products? Why do you do something a certain way? Why you should be, thinking about your application or the way you handle customers or all these different things. Why? Because if I explain the why to you, you're going to understand the actual concept, and it's going to be that much easier for you to actually latch onto and implement and understand. And it will solidify in your brain because you will know not only the rule, but you will know why. And then that also allows you to challenge those things yourself and to customize them and to say, does that work for me? Is that something I actually want to implement? Does that work for my business? So that curiosity, I think, is huge. And if you're not a naturally curious person, maybe try. Maybe the next time something comes across your radar, you can say, hey, instead of just kind of going with the flow or just, keeping on the surface, let me dig into that a little bit more. Let me look at just a couple things about why. Let me triangulate a little bit of information and see where that goes. And it's really cool what you can find. And again, I'm addicted to learning. I'm addicted to curiosity. That also leads to the troubleshooting factor. And troubleshooting as a nail technician is honestly the number one thing that we have to do. Now, you can call it pivoting. Pivoting is another great word, like I said, with the entrepreneurship thing. Small business owners, that's what we have to do. We live and breathe pivoting. You try something, it doesn't work, you got to pivot, you got to do something else, right? So we're always kind of bobbing and weaving. We're always trying to figure out what our next move is going to be. And I think same thing with even something as simple as nail services, right? I mean, we have to troubleshoot so much because every client's different and what they're doing in between appointments, which we cannot observe. We have to also be able to be intuitive about that and then troubleshoot what we think is actually happening. We're like Nancy Drew. So I think those things are definitely keys to success, and also never being complacent. Complacency is absolutely a business killer, and I kind of touched on that in my first podcast 9 years ago, and it's cool that it still rings true today. Complacency, if you're curious about what that means, it means you're totally cool with the way things are. You don't really care about moving things forward. You don't really care about making changes. And I understand we get worn out. And I understand right now in the time that I'm doing this podcast, a lot of us are very worn out. COVID threw a curveball for a lot of us. It caused a lot of trauma for a lot of us. It wore us out. And things really haven't gotten back to normal. I mean, if you're actually honest with yourself, things are more expensive than they ever have been. There's a lot of things that are happening that maybe aren't really in your face all the time, but you just feel worn out. I don't know if you do, but I do. I mean, I feel more worn out these days than I did a couple years ago. And I think it's just because things are a little bit more difficult. They're a little bit more complicated. Things don't run as smoothly. And complacency is also kind of part of that. Like, I know that you can be worn out, but rather than waving the white flag and saying, oh my gosh, I'll just give in, I'll just be another one of those people that just like doesn't ask questions and like doesn't try to change anything, and I'll just do the bare minimum. And I was laughing because even the other day I was watching, South Park episode. I love South Park. And I don't probably look like I love South Park, but I love South Park. I've watched it since the day it got created. And, Cartman was talking about bare minimum Mondays, and like funny stuff like that. And it's so true. I mean, so one of the great things about South Park is that they're satirical and they are so right on in a lot of ways. Obviously, they go to extremes with it, but there's a lot of truth in South Park. And I think that complacency, although we can feel very justified in the complacency, and don't get me wrong, I know a lot of us are justified in feeling worn out. But when we are complacent, it does have a ripple effect. You wouldn't realize it unless you started to actually dig into it, but it does. That complacency allows us to wake up 20 years later and go, where am I? Like midlife crises are because of complacency. Your business not being where you want it to be is based on complacency. Not charging more, not letting your business evolve it to the next level part of that is complacency. Part of it's fear, but I also think, that complacency really comes sometimes from fear of failure or just fear of the unknown. So those are the things that if I could offer some nuggets, from Liz 9 years ago, as to what really still rings true today and what I can tell you is the theme that has kept me successful, definitely is that addicted to learning, that curiosity, that wanting to troubleshoot and understand where things come from, and not being complacent really is something that has helped me. And I hope me sharing this, can help you if you're in that same place. And also, one of the things I mentioned in my podcast was, not feeling alone. I think it's easy to feel siloed when we are on this journey, this self-discovery journey, this entrepreneurial journey, this small business owner journey, because many people don't understand what we're doing. They don't understand why you would become a nail technician. There's a lot of stigma attached to it still. You wouldn't think so in this modern era, but there's just a lot of stuff that we face, a lot of opinions, a lot of heat we take. There's a lot of scrutiny. There's a lot of even just feeling like you're not the cutest, when you wake up in the morning, and that you have nothing important to say, and that nobody cares, and that you have no outlet, and that all you're doing is working all the time, and nobody's grateful for what you do, and your clients aren't grateful for you. I mean, it's very easy to slip into that negative thought pattern where we start to just beat ourselves up. And I want you to know that you're not alone in that. I also face that, I do my best, I try to put my best foot forward. I try to dress a certain way to put forward, the identity I want to have. I try to put makeup on. I try to do my hair. I try to shake things off. I try to realize that there's no one on this planet like me. So how can I say that what I do and what I say and how I interact with people doesn't matter? There's no other person. There's no other Liz Morris on this planet. There might be people like me. There might be people that are, well equipped and can, do things like I can, and other people that are similar to me and have my same views on certain things. But at the end of the day, there's nobody like us. There's nobody like you. So I want you to really think about that. I want you to really think about how you being unique, you being the only person like you being the only person that can give that experience to your client every day. You're the only person that can give that experience to your significant other, your family, your friends, anybody you come across, the person that maybe you hold the door open, when you're going into a building, the person that you let get in front of you in line, the person you chat up just randomly about, you like their t-shirt or whatever it is. That impact that you have on this universe is unique. And so if you can really harness what's unique about you and be curious about what's unique about you and be curious about the world and be curious about what you can contribute and never give up and never become complacent and always improve upon yourself, I'm telling you, if you can live with just a smidgen of that intensity, you will be so much more the better for it. And I know it's hard, but I want you to know you're not alone in feeling like that's an uphill battle. I feel like it's an uphill battle, but by us all taking that courage, having that courage and that fearlessness to live life, taking it by the horns with intensity, with a little bit of fearlessness, with trying things, and picking ourselves back up again, it will make you feel so much more fulfilled. Even if you're not successful in one specific thing, at least you tried. At least if something failed, it was by your hand. You're not a victim of your circumstances. You're empowered by what you're doing. You own your life. And I think some of that is really what I was thinking back then. I was in this new journey, starting my own salon, 2 years into it, learning a lot about myself, learning about what I was capable of, learning a lot about, the grit I needed to have. And I hope by me revisiting these topics and me sharing, how it's affecting me and how it's remotivating me, I hope maybe you revisit that. Maybe revisit your pictures from 9 years ago and just look at what you were up to. Think about that. Think about where you were 10 years ago and what you imagined for yourself and what you want to be doing, and just take that journey of self-discovery, be in it, love yourself, give yourself some grace, but also, kick your own ass a little bit, and it's going to be a game changer for you. I know it. So I would love for you guys to share with me, what are some of the tactics that you that you use to help yourself, that you implement? How are you feeling these days? Are you feeling worn out? Are you feeling like you're giving up? Are you feeling like, this isn't the career for you? What are some of the things that I could share with you that might help you in your journey? Because we're definitely in this together. We're definitely, both, in the same industry. We're both in the same entrepreneurial self-discovery journey. So if I can be an advocate for you, I would really love to do that. So share with me, and I'll have more to share next time. All right. Bye.